It's almost time, kids. The clock is ticking. Be in front of your TV sets for the Horathon. And remember the big giveaway at 9. Don't miss it. And don't forget to wear your masks. The clock is ticking. It's almost time.
Happy Halloween. Oh, well, nearly anyway. Hey guys, that should indicate that we're doing the wacky third Halloween movie today on the show. Welcome again, Rachel. How's it going?
Good. Hi, horror fans. Yes, so my Blu-ray's finally arrived, so we are doing Season of the Witch. The first time I've ever watched it. I think Keith has seen it before.
Yeah, I've seen it before. I just rented it quite cheap because I don't yet have the set. I'll have to get the set, but yeah. I will get the set at some point. The Halloween franchise in the run-up to Halloween Kills, which comes out at the end of October. So once again, the countdown is on.
Doing the third part. I've never seen this one before. I have so many thoughts, and they're not all that great.
Okay. Well, we'll get into it. But before we do you want to just give it a bit of a setup?
Yeah, of course. So, for anyone who is not familiar with the Halloween franchise, as we've spoken about before, the first Halloween movie was supposed to be just a standalone before they decided to do a sequel. But this is what John Carpenter always wanted to do with the series. He wanted to make it an anthology series. So, Season of the Witch, which, by the way, very misleading title, and we're going to get into that, but this title, very misleading. So Season of the Witch is a standalone film, so it falls under the Halloween banner, but it is a completely new story, which I actually had no idea what this film was about. I've never seen it. I've only ever heard it referenced, so I went and I found a trailer, an old 80s trailer, which gave me nothing, and so I went to IMDb and decided to have a look at the plot on IMDb. And it's basically about an evil toy corporation who want to... it got really convoluted, people. We're going to get into this plot as it goes along. But basically, they have an evil scheme that involves Halloween masks by a Silvershamrock company, because when we all think of Halloween, we think of the Irish, because that's just a thing. And so then we got Season of the Witch, completely new characters, completely new setting, and they let us know that it is a completely new universe because they do have a scene, which I actually did quite like, this little shout out, where a character, we're going to call this character Blonde Tom Selleck because I can't remember his name and that's who he reminds me of. So Blonde Tom Selleck is in a bar and they show the original Halloween film, making it very, very obvious that this is set in a different universe and that the actual film itself exists within this universe, which I actually thought was quite a clever touch. That was one of the things I did like, but overall, I came away from this film very underwhelmed. So I have a very unpopular opinion to share, which I'm a little scared to share, especially with horror fans, but I am not a fan of 80s horror. It's my least favorite horror era. I don't like 80s horror. There's a few movies from the era that I think are good, like A Nightmare on Elm Street, and I can't even think of another one at this point in time, but I know there are a couple. But in general, 80s horror was very cheesy. It was very over the top, and it just is not my style of horror.
Say that like it's a bad thing.
Well, it seems to be a very unpopular opinion in the horror community. People have this real reverence surrounding 80s horror, and I can't do it. I think the 80s as a era in general is not my favorite decade, which is where I was born, right in the middle of the 80s. So I kind of missed the 80s and I grew up in the 90s. But looking back on it, the 80s, not the greatest movies, not the greatest music, not the greatest it's just not the greatest decade. And so this movie, unfortunately, falls into that.
There's some amazing movies from the 80s. What are you talking about?
I know, this is why I was afraid to voice this opinion.
I mean,
so, that's my little... in the 80s, not too bad. You got some good action movies in the 80s, but horror movies in the 80s, not my thing. Just not my era.
In Blue Velvet, in general, I think there's a lot of great 80s movies. I get where you're coming from horror, but I mean, I'm one who just embraces that. I do embrace the sort of cheesy elements. And although it's sort of sci-fi and horror, but The Thing, that's another good one.
John Carpenter. Of course. Well, I mean, Carpenter, always. Yeah,
and The Fly. Cronenberg, really good. So.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was my confession. So yes, I feel like this falls into, so I have to admit when I sat down to watch this last night and the credits came on And I thought the credits were very good because I thought the credits immediately felt very different. They immediately set themselves apart from the first movie. You know, the first two movies we had the iconic Halloween theme that we're used to. We had the pumpkin. This one came on and immediately you knew this was going to be a different movie. This is going to be, it had that 80s feel. It had that new score, which was very cool. So the credits were very cool.
Yeah.
But then we came into the opening scene, and the opening scene to me felt more like, what did I write here? My impression was that it felt kind of like a conspiracy government opening scene, like from a crime action movie. Almost like I was watching an episode of The X-Files, you know, like you had the guy running down the dark street and he was very clearly running from a secret that he had. And then you had the slow government car following him and then the man in the suits coming over. And then you had that first kill, which was just ridiculous with the guy getting smushed between the two cars. So yes, so the opening right from the beginning did not love the feel, but at the very least it set itself apart from the first two movies. So if they wanted you to know that they were doing something different with this movie, they definitely achieved it within the first 10 minutes. You knew immediately that this was not going to be the same sort of film. So that was my first impression within the first 10 minutes. How long has it been since you've seen it?
Not too long. I think I saw it last year, those movies, where you either run with it and embrace like the wackiness and just how silly it is. Because, we'll talk more about the convoluted plot because at times it gets really convoluted. And it definitely doesn't feel like a Halloween movie, really. I think that opening with the music and the way I think you summed it up quite well. A little bit X-Files, a little bit. It just felt a bit like an action type movies because the music as well, which I like the music. Carpenter.
I did, yes.
It was him and someone else. They both did the music, but obviously he's kind of got his prints all over it. And, you know, fair play. I think you want it to have a different feel if it's going to feel like this new kind of Halloween movie. Sort of. So, you know, I was getting sort of vibes of like 80s action type movie with the music and with the way the scene played out. But in general, I just enjoy this one as a guilty pleasure. It's just so wacky and it's sort of a B movie which does kind of deal with certain themes but obviously it sort of loses any thread of them after like 30 seconds, but it's definitely like there's hints at themes because I almost got like an 80s sort of maybe anti-capitalism sort of thing, obviously to do partly because of the whole thing with the masks and what have you, but also just the fact that like these guys who we later find out are basically like robots, aren't they?
Yeah, they're like cyborgs or pod people or something.
Another which is just crazy, but almost like that the fact that they're in like quite smart suits really and their whole sort of movement, which I think in a way you can sort of see that maybe they're going to be robots, but that sort of felt like almost like a capitalism sort of thing, the fact that they're just going through people like the cold heart of capitalism. But I may be giving them too much credit in some ways. Tommy Lee Wallace directs and also writes this. It's worth saying. So he's the director. I don't know much about him, to be honest. I think
he directed this really obscure movie that I used to love as a kid that I actually no one else had ever heard of, and I became convinced that I'd made it up. It was called The Boy Who Could Fly, and it was about this. I think he was an autistic kid, but he could literally fly, and he made friends with this neighbor girl, and at the end they could both fly. And I just remember really liking this film as a kid, and then I found out that he directed it, and I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of a cool little connection. Another word, but I haven't seen that movie since I was, 4 or 5, all the way back. Yeah.
I think I know the movie you've seen. I might have seen it when I was younger as well. I've certainly heard of it, I think, but
so he directed that as well. But
really?
so and I think he writes this, and I think Carpenter, when I looked on IMDb, Carpenter was an uncredited writer on this one, but you can't really see his mark. And he and Deborah Hill were executive producers on this one, so obviously they had a hand in it. But this one definitely feels like it's not in the Carpenter universe. You know, they wanted to make it different. They definitely achieved that with this film. It doesn't feel at all like the Halloween films, and it's got nothing to do with witches. I was very, very disappointed. This is such a misleading title.
It's crazy, and definitely I can see that the description, blonde Tom Selleck. I can see where you come from. I know he's a doctor, and the actor's Tom Atkinson, and he gives it a good go, to be fair. I think he sort of understands that he's in a really silly B movie, and he just sort of comes it up. But yeah, his character is just like ridiculous. He's just one of these characters who you see in like a really cheesy network type show where he's meant to be like a doctor, but also he becomes like an action hero at the same time. And he's like a ladies' man, but he's like totally
I swear,
creepy.
When the daughter came on, I saw her and I was like, please do not be a love interest. Please do not be a love interest. And then they had the scene at the hotel, and I was like, why am I not surprised that he's hooking up with a girl who is, I went and had a look at the actor's ages. He's 25 years older than her. I mean, I know that we should expect this in Hollywood, but it was just creepy. I was like, this is a very, very creepy hookup scene between some chick and blonde Tom Selleck who looks like he's old enough to be her dad.
Yeah, because at the most I think her character or the actress would be like early 20s at the most.
Definitely.
And he's clearly, pushing
in his 50s. The fact that he doesn't ask her how old she is until after they hook up. It's like, well, it's not going to do you any good now, dude. If she's underage, you've already committed the crime. Why are you checking now? So yeah, that whole thing was just weird and kind of unnecessary. I mean, I get that they had to establish a relationship between them for the ending to be effective, because we will talk about the ending. The ending was one of the few things that I thought was actually really good about this film. But I wish that they'd gone more with a father-daughter kind of mentor relationship, but it was the 80s. And so we'll use that excuse. Anytime there was something bad, we'll just say it was the 80s.
Really creepy, because you had the stuff where he was on a case kind of, but he was sort of lying to like his ex-wife, and he was talking about, and so I would be home for Halloween, but not totally being honest about what he was actually doing, and he's off girl, and because
you don't want to tell your ex-wife that you're hooking up in a hotel room with a girl half your age, do you?
A very young girl, and I kind of love the fact there's just something funny about the fact that he gets off the phone to her, and he has like a 6-pack of beer as well, so he's clearly off to have a good time.
He knows what's up. He knows exactly what he's doing. Good old blonde Tom Selleck, he's getting some. That was a weird, and his character was weird, but by the same token, it's like you said, it's like the actor just seemed to be having fun. He was just kind of like, well, I'm in a bad movie, I might as well make the most of it. But yeah, it was really weird how originally he was a doctor, and then all of a sudden he's an action star, and he's chasing people down, and he's punching cyborgs, and it's just like, what is even going on? And guys, I'm guessing whoever's watching this, you're probably really confused about the plot of this movie, given everything we're talking about right now. At least with the other two movies, we could kind of linearly go along and talk about the plot, but this one, it just
everywhere. We might as well. It's almost like, if Tom Selleck was like a doctor, this guy would, it's almost, if Magnum PI was a doctor, that would be this guy, basically. And some of the stuff with like the lab girl and their sort of flirtation, that was kind of creepy.
Yeah, there was that one too. At least she was a little bit more age appropriate, but it's like, this dude's just trying to get in anyone's pants that he can. It was a little much. Like, again, I know it was the 80s, but let's dial it back a little bit. Oh, but you mentioned last week that there might be singing this week, and I was like, what? But now that I've watched it,
you hear it,
jingle. Oh, that jingle. Guys, have you ever heard My Fair Lady? The little jingle that you had from when you were a kid? Well, they've revamped that. Just go and look it up, because you don't want to singing it. It will be stuck in your heads for the rest of the day. And they use it at least half a dozen times.
That's one thing I like, though. I did like that there was a countdown to Halloween. I like
that. Was
that
actually kind of cool.
Yeah, because it came up on
Still
screen.
Halloween, Halloween, Halloween.
There you go. I told you. And I'm definitely going to insert some at the end of this video. I've got to do it, basically. But yeah, there wasn't any chemistry really between him and the girl. I thought that actress was pretty bad, entertaining, ridiculous type character. We'll get to the ending, but I did enjoy how hammy he was at the end. I thought that was sort of great fun. But yeah, some of these other characters, because I mean, at one point they obviously go to this motel, which we're talking about, and it's because her father who gets killed.
Yes, so he's the guy from the opening scene that was running away. Yeah, and
there's a little bit of goo and sort of, I don't know, either almost like robot sort of slime in a way. We'll talk about that. We'll get into the kill, but in any case, that's sort of the connection because that's her father, and he works for the factory. He works at the factory where the toys are produced, or something like that.
Yes, yeah.
So they go to this other town to like track down the source. So we're getting quite a clever little like mystery plot going on here, almost.
Yes,
like
and I did notice that, and that's what I was thinking. As I was watching it, I was like, this feels more like a murder mystery film, and that was another thing that I found kind of misleading, is that this does not feel like a horror film. It feels like a science fiction film, and I have to say, despite this, there's a whole story behind this TARDIS mug. But despite this, I'm actually not a massive science fiction fan. It's a genre that I've never gelled with ever. And if I do like science fiction, it's usually something that is technically science fiction, but not really, like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, or shows like Dollhouse or Firefly. But they're definitely science fiction, but they're not. So yeah, so I'm watching this and I'm like, I don't feel like I'm watching a horror film. I feel like I'm watching a science fiction film, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or like I said, like I think this would have made a really good episode of The X-Files. Like it really felt like it had that X-Files feel to it. So I think calling it Halloween and making it part of the Halloween franchise and making it a horror film is a little misleading.
So I think what you're saying is the viewers can't expect a spin-off sci-fi podcast anytime soon with us.
Unfortunately not.
With Rachel, I'll stick to the horror. So, okay. Yeah, but I was just talking about the characters because they obviously stay at this hotel. And it's really random because it turns out like everyone who seems to have some sort of connection to like this factory seem to be staying at the same hotel. Well, this is a really small town. And those characters were also just kind of weird and goofy because you have the couple where the guy's like the salesman or something, and they just when you first see them, they just sort of act like swingers in a way. Like she's got this weirdly flirtatious sort of air. When I guess it's just because of the charisma of Tom Atkins, I guess she just couldn't resist. But she just comes on like really strong in an over the top sort of way. And yet they're meant to be like this wholesome sort of family because they come up in a camper van. They've got obviously one kid I think it is, who we'll talk more about like what happens to him later.
Yes, we will.
But yeah, and then you had another one, like a woman who just comes on in the car and she doesn't take a breath. As soon as she comes out of the car, she's like just bitching about the factory and stuff.
Yeah.
Like to like a total stranger. Okay.
It is weird because she starts talking to the chick, again, name, can't remember, Tom Selleck's love interest. She starts talking to her like they're friends, like they just know each other, like, oh yeah, I need to come to the factory to get this because it broke. And it's like, do we know you? Have you ever met? Have you ever interacted before? No, you got a point. A lot of the characters outside of blonde Tom Selleck are very forgettable. And even him, I can't even remember his actual name. It was just...
They're sort of forgettable, but then they're entertaining. So again, going with
true, because they are very cheesy. Like you can, if you ever get frustrated with this movie, you can just enjoy the cheese. Cheese is always fun.
But it's just like you said, it's just so random. It's just so like, who are these people? I mean, why are they acting in this over the top sort of way? actor playing the boss, you know, the big, like, what's his name again?
Yes.
Got an Irish name.
Yes. Because again, Irish Halloween.
Of course, yeah. But I've seen him in other stuff. I think he was in
Conal Cochran.
That's it. Yeah, I've seen that actor in a few things. I think he's in one of the RoboCop movies.
Oh, okay.
Maybe the second one. Oh, yes, But you should check out RoboCop. But yeah, he's in one of those. Maybe the second one. And he always plays sort of slimy type, corporate type, so he's very good at it. So he was good. He's sort of good value. But yeah, it's just such a wacky film with some of the characters and the stuff they get onto.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can talk more about getting towards the end, but one thing I thought was kind of funny was the fact that at one point he gives a tour to like the salesman and obviously Tom Hanks. And it's like, well, if he's up to all this shady shit, then why is he giving a tour? Well, surely that's just asking for trouble. Because at one point the girl almost like sort of gets in like behind the scenes and kind of almost sees what's going on. And it's like, well, yeah, if I was doing all this shady shit, I don't think I would be giving tours.
No, I don't think a lot of people would. That was really weird. Again, I feel like, so our last two reviews, we've been able to go through the movies and talk, you know, structurally about the direction and the music and the characters, but here we're just kind of jumping all over the place. But I think it's because that's what this movie does. It's so weird and it's so random and it's got so many bizarre like happenings that it's just like you can't do a proper normal linear review. We're just kind of jumping around talking about everything that pops into our head because that's kind of the experience of watching this movie. I remember being really confused about halfway through, just going, okay, so what is the overall goal of this movie? Like what exactly is, because you don't really get the reveal about what they're doing until like a good 3/4 of the way through the movie. Yeah. And you're just, the rest of the time, you're just kind of like, what is going on? And what does this have to do with Halloween? That was another thing. It doesn't really feel like Halloween in this movie. You only have, the majority of the movie takes place before the actual night. Then when we finally get to Halloween, we only get like about 20 minutes of the actual night, if that. So again, I think it's very misleading calling it Halloween Season of the Witch. There are no witches. Where are the witches?
Yeah, the Season of the Witch is just weird. I don't know why they stuck that on. I mean, obviously Halloween, just because it's, I think they were worried they would like totally lose the audience if they didn't put that in the title.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you said, I didn't actually know about that, then that was Carpenter's original idea. And
oh, okay, yeah.
We've obviously said before, I think, then it's actually not a bad idea. It's just that it didn't really work out because they sort of did it the wrong way round. In a way, if they'd started the franchise like this, it may have had legs, but because you had those movies and fans get attached to Michael Myers and other characters, that's why it didn't really work out for them.
Yeah, I just don't think they could have predicted how successful Michael was as a villain, because that was obviously the big complaint with this movie, was that it didn't have Michael in it and it wasn't connected to Michael in any way. And so when they made the first movie, hoping for it to be an anthology, they probably just thought that Michael would be just kind of this one-off villain that would disappear, but he was just such a great villain that he took off so well that it just kind of ruined any follow-up. So I've heard people say that if this was not part of the Halloween franchise, it may have been better received. I think it being part of the Halloween franchise probably actually helped it a bit. I think if it wasn't part of this franchise, it may have just disappeared into 80s movies obscurity, because there's nothing really stand out about this film. There's nothing that, or at least for me, you know, even the Halloween sequels, you still have Michael, you still have Loomis, you still have Laurie in some of them. So you still have elements that, even if the movie themselves are not that great, as some of them are not, you still have elements that are fantastic. This one, I mean, if it wasn't part of the Halloween franchise, I probably would never have watched it, you know? So I think there's probably a lot of people like that. I think it probably got more exposure because they made it part of the Halloween franchise, but it's kind of like they shot themselves in the foot, because by making it part of the franchise, it was linked to something that was already so popular. So towards the end of the film, we finally start to get this reveal, and this is where it gets really convoluted. So we've talked about how there's been a mystery and we've got a bit of a conspiracy thing. So it starts with, we should actually say that the main incident that kicks all this off is the guy that we see from the opening scene is murdered in quite a nasty fashion. And this is our first indication that there's something not quite right. So it looks like a guy is smothering him, but what he actually does is kind of pull his whole face. He kind of breaks his whole face. It's nasty. And kind of rips it up.
Yeah, it sort of cuts away, doesn't it? So you don't really feel it. But you kind of the idea of it,
the aftermath. And then the guy who killed him goes and jumps into a car, and then the car explodes. Now, I did not see that coming. Like, I'm just sitting, chilling at home, watching this movie, and then all of a sudden a freaking car explosion happens. And so we have this murder-suicide that kind of kickstarts all the events. And blonde Tom Selleck is working at the hospital when this happens, gets very shaken. And then one of the victims, the guy who was murdered, his daughter, who is the inappropriately aged love interest, they go on this whole quest to find out exactly what's happening. And then we get this weird reveal involving Stonehenge and ancient prophecy and some sort of weird cult. It's all very convoluted, people. Like, I don't even think we're explaining it properly.
Kills are really random in this, and enjoyed them. But one that was really random and hilarious was the wife. Was it? No, it was the other woman, the one who was the quite bit.
Yes. The laser
herself with the light, and I knew something was going to happen because the camera leaked on her, but I didn't expect that. It's a shame they cut away so soon, but the actual kill, I enjoyed that because it was just
so random though. Again, she's fiddling with the toy part, and all of a sudden this laser shoots out. I mean, the next time you see her face has exploded. It's like something out of Alien. It's like as if the alien exploded from her face. That's what it looked like. It was very impressive. Like, the makeup was very impressive, and the gore factor was very impressive. But like you said, it was just so random. It was like there was no rhyme or reason to it. Where apparently everyone stays in the same motel, and it's all to do with this thing that they just keep calling the factory, which is linked to this annoying ad that we just keep seeing, as we sang before, where the countdown to Halloween is happening. And then you find out that this factory. Okay, so Keith, jump in if you wish, because I still am a little unclear as to what was going on in this movie. So this Cochrane guy has brought pieces of Stonehenge to America, and these pieces of Stonehenge have some sort of primal mystical magic in them that they have imbued into the toys and the masks that they're selling on Halloween. And when the kids put these masks on, they're all going to die in fairly horrifying ways, which we do see one of those deaths on screen, and we will talk about that because that was a very good death. And then when they all die, they will be part of this ritual sacrifice to bring forth some primordial witchy, I don't know, something. And it's never quite made clear, but that's, I'm assuming, where we get the witch from, because it's some sort of ancient witch ritual. And this is their evil plan, to run this big giveaway, to run this ad at exactly this time across 3 different channels, so that all the kids will watch and put the masks on and die for this ritual. Not even making this stuff up, guys. This was the 80s. This is what passed for entertainment in the 80s.
Very trippy. Yeah, you're about right. I mean, to be honest, I've got it on rental for another, like, 20 odd days. So I might go back and watch it later just to check, see if I can make any more sense of it. But
tell me if you do.
I'll take your word for it. Pretty much, they were in the ballpark. And also, I have to say, might annoy you more, but you can sort of see this as the inspiration for that Angel episode, Smile Time.
I definitely, I am with you on that one. I can see where you're coming from, most definitely.
Which you get more pleasure out of is down to taste, really. But
it's just, it was really weird, because it was like, it's not a bad movie. I wouldn't say it's a bad movie. It was a weird movie, though. Like, just really weird. Weird and random. And like I said, guys, if you go into this expecting like an atmospheric Halloween film, no. Go in expecting an episode of The X-Files. And I mean, like, a very early episode of The X-Files, or some sort of think kind of science fiction.
Elements of crime, law and order, stuff like that. And then you've got obviously this whole ritual thing, and it really goes places. Another thing, just speaking of the ending, because the ending's sort of like a cliffhanger, and you get stuff like, again, we're jumping about, but there's stuff like one moment I enjoyed, which I guess was the reveal that they're a lot of them anyway are all like kind of robots or androids or whatever the hell they were meant to be. But the old woman in the chair where her head came off, that was a good moment. I enjoyed that. That was crazy. I think that was the sort of scene where the practical effects were sort of doing a good job. But yeah, I didn't expect that. I knew something was going down, but I didn't think that was going to get her like.
Yeah, that was a good one. And just the old lady in general, even before her head fell off, she was creepy. There are some definite creepy moments in this.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she got to me. And then, of course, because we're getting towards the end, we do see one of the Halloween masks in action with the family that we spoke about, the Swinger family. Their kid, they're brought to the factory because the husband is employee of the month or something, and he's been chosen to be like the test subject. So they put them in this room and they play the ad that they're going to play at 9:30 or whatever, and the kid puts on a pumpkin mask and his whole head disintegrates. It is nasty, people. You see the whole pumpkin kind of cave in on itself, and then bugs, as if it wasn't bad enough, then we get bugs.
Yeah, coming out of the thing, and then they start filling up the room. Where is this scene going? I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. But I absolutely love it. I loved like the sound on the TV, like the way that the theme just boom, 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 almost like very Willy Wonka and that sort of thing, because it just repeats over and over, and like the son's getting more and more like hypnotized by it, and it's almost
a creepy scene.
Like a rhythm.
But it's effective. It was a good thing. Like when they do the gore in this movie, when they do have kills, they are quite effective. They're just very few and far between, except for the opening kill, where some dude gets squashed by a car that's literally going like 2 kilometers per hour. It's and it somehow still manages to cut him in half. But a lot of the scenes are quite gory.
That could catch on, that whole employee of the month. Is that if that's what they're going to give them? I mean, that could make the whole thing a lot more interesting. But
as we get towards the end, though, I have to admit the ending of this film, even though the rest of it I was kind of about, I did like the ending. First of all, we see blonde Tom Selleck. He rescues his love interest, and then they escape. Now we're getting into major spoiler territory here, guys. So if you don't want to know, stop, turn away. But this I did not see coming. As they're driving away, it all looks fine. He's putting on the radio, and then all of a sudden, she tries to kill him, and it's revealed that she's been captured and swapped with a pod person. And I did not see that coming. Yeah. Like when that happened, that was a huge shock for me. So I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, but yeah, we just get to this. Because again, the ending I really enjoyed. I agree with you, but again, there's so many sort of holes in it, because the whole thing is then he's trying to get them to shut off the transmission. And bearing in mind, we know this is transmitting around the country because we see the different cities. And so the logic of it, he's on the phone with, in theory, the local cable station, and he's telling shut it off, and they shut the first one off, and then he's telling them to shut the other one off, and then they seem to be showing up, but it's the local cable. How the hell can they control around the country? I'm pretty sure it doesn't work like that.
It's very true. That being said, I did think the ending was very effective. So this movie has a bit of a nihilistic ending where he does manage to get 2 of the stations to shut the ad off, but then the third one is still running. And so the movie ends with the jingle playing over and over while he screams, turn it off, turn it off. And like you said at the beginning, it's a very cliffhanger ending, but I actually thought it was a very cool ending. I thought it was really bold of them to have a cliffhanger ending that was unhappy, that was a downer ending. And I really quite liked the suspense of him and the desperation of him, because again the actor was just hamming it up, turn it off, just kind of having the time of his life. But I did think that ending was very effective. It was very chilling ending, knowing that he hasn't stopped anything, that this corporation is just gonna keep going. The ending was great. I thought the ending was fun. The rest of the movie is very weird. Very, very weird. So
I get
And like I said, I feel like our review this time around has been very random. It's been very, sorry guys, it's not our usual linear review, but I don't think you can review this movie in a nice, calm way.
We had fun though. I mean, after a while talking about great movies, greatly directed, it just gets boring because you're just saying, this was great, this was great. So
absolutely.
It's good to have fun once in a while.
So I think we've arrived at the rating portion. I wouldn't even know how to rate this film. How about you go first, Keith, while I think about my rating?
Well, I think, as you can tell, I'm more positive because I just go with it. I just think it's a goofy, guilty pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tom Selleck guy is a total charisma magnet. He's so cool and suave. I love his hammy acting. There's ridiculous lines of dialogue I enjoy. There's goofy set pieces. There's fun deaths. I think we both agree that the deaths were pretty good, although kind of in a wacky sort of way, rather than being, they're sort of well directed, like, gory sort of. But no, they did sort of gross us out on some levels, and I quite enjoy the music. The same, but. No, it's a guilty pleasure, and that's the way I approach, and I kind of enjoy it, and I just go with it. I kind of see what you mean about it dragging, and there's certain points where nothing really happens, but it was just all so random and trippy, and just the insane reveal and stuff is just kind of just so bad it's good. So I give it a super high score, but I will give it 6 out of 10.
Nice.
I can't believe I'm saying that it's better than Halloween 2. Well, it's not better. Technically, Halloween 2 is a better movie, as in directing, acting.
Entertainment goes. Yeah. I get rating, like some movies that might take. I mean, when we get to other franchises, we'll have movies that, like, because there is a particular franchise where the way you're talking about this movie, there is an installment that I feel the same way about. Like, it's not the greatest one, but it's very entertaining and it's kind of a guilty pleasure. So I totally get that. For me, I think it fell down a little bit because I wasn't prepared for the fact that it wasn't like a horror movie. So I think that really took me out of the experience, and it being more sci-fi than horror. I liked that they established it as a very different film from the first two. I like that they made it very clear that it was its own universe and this was going to be a very different experience. I thought the opening was good. I thought the ending was good. It was just kind of a stuff in the middle that was a little too weird for me and a little too random. The creepy hookup did not help at all. That just kind of took me out of everything. So I'd probably go with 5 out of 10 again. I didn't think it was terrible, but for me, I think I probably won't revisit this one. I think this will probably be one of the ones in the franchise that if I see it once, that's probably enough for me. I like owning it because I'm a collector and I like to own things, but I don't know that I will watch it again. So 5 out of 10 for me. So kind of the same as Halloween 2, kind of like not fantastic, not so terrible that it warrants like a really bad rating. But for me, it was an interesting experience watching this for the first time.
Yeah, I get that. To me, it is this oddity in the Halloween universe, and it's sort of in the past. I'm probably have been similar to you in what I thought of it, and it's just gone up a bit. So it's one of those movies I will rewatch it, and I think it's one of those where it might just change every time there may be another view.
Yeah.
I just don't feel it.
Sometimes it's like you were saying, it's fun to talk about technically good films, to talk about how fantastic some films are. Sometimes it's just fun to watch a really fun, cheesy horror film, especially horror films, which is so much fun when they're cheesy. And so I definitely get this being a guilty pleasure. Like I said, I think for me, if it was heavier on the horror elements, I might have enjoyed it a bit more. Yeah. But because it was more sci-fi, it kind of, and because I didn't know that that's what I was going to be getting. Again, I think if I'd been warned that this was more sci-fi, then I would have gone and known what to expect. But I was about halfway through the movie and I was like, this doesn't feel like a horror movie. This feels like a science fiction movie. And so that kind of brought it down for me. But I definitely get it being a guilty pleasure. And I can understand why people, why it does have a cult following and why there is this small subsection of the Halloween fandom that just really loves this one, because it is very different and it's something original, something a bit cheesy, a bit fun. The lead character is, like you said, he's cheesy, he's hammy, he's fun, he's charismatic. So it's got some really good stuff going for it. Unfortunately for me, it was a little too weird and a little too sci-fi-y. So that's where it fell down. I won't be here next week because Keith is away, unfortunately.
Fright Fest in London, so I'll actually have some potential new horror movies to report on when I get back. I don't know what I'm seeing yet because I'm volunteering, but at some point I hope to catch some new movies. So I will mention that next time we're on, which will obviously be 2 weeks now. And we're not quite sure exactly what we're going to do next time because obviously the new Candyman is coming out and I certainly plan to do it. Unfortunately, it may not be possible for Rachel to do it, but she's going to let me know. But there will be a review of some kind of that. And then if Rachel can't do it, we'll definitely circle back and because we're going to do those films anyway, the original. So
just to make it clear, people, I love the Candyman films. Candyman is one of my favorite horror films of all time. Tony Todd is just amazing. But unfortunately, Australia, most of us are in lockdown at the moment because coronavirus is a bitch. So I don't know if I'm going to get to the cinema when this comes out. So we've got a few ideas. If we can do Candyman, we will. If not, we'll come back at you with another Halloween film and we'll be back into the Michael Myers stuff. So that'll be good.
That's the plan. And I mean, the good news about that is technically you might end up getting free reviews that week because we were thinking of doing a double Halloween, so 4 and 5. So then I'll probably be doing Candyman sort of solo. So that's kind of a cool week, free. Plus the Fright Fest stuff. So that's
lots of good stuff coming up.
Lots of good stuff. So that'll be next time, which will be 2 weeks because obviously I'm away. So Rachel, if you want to quickly plug your channel.
All right, guys, as you know, you can follow me, Rachel McDonald, on YouTube, video essays covering TV shows and movies. And you can also follow me on Twitter and Tumblr. Both of my links are through my YouTube channel. So follow me everywhere you can.
Very nice. And as always, I'll put the link in the description. Go and check out Rachel's channel. Guys, it's been fun. And yeah, check out, like and subscribe, share us on social media, all the rest of it. And we'll be back with more horror movie reviews soon. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, Silvershamrock. Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, Silvershamrock.
He's watching you, friend, I guarantee you that. Hey, Cochran! Fuck you! Ooh, shh, easy. It's all right, it's all right. Last Halloween for that lousy factory of his. Pretty wild shit going on in there. Each and a half of Molotov cocktails. Burn that son of a bitch right down. Last Halloween for them. Yeah. Halloween.
Hell, no, I'm just kidding. You know that, I'm kidding.
Maybe they're not going to have Halloween next year.
With silver shamrock masks, gather round your TV set. Put on your mask. Watch.
I think this whole thing is a big joke. I mean, look at that.